Welcome to Real Estate Coaching Radio, starring award-winning real estate coaches and #1 international best-selling authors, Tim and Julie Harris. This is the #1 daily radio show for realtors looking for a no BS, authentic, real-time coaching experience. What's really working in today's market, how to generate more leads, make more money, and have more time for what you love in your life. And now your hosts, Tim and Julie Harris.
Welcome back. Today is part 2 on how to generate 10 free listing leads now. And we're going to be getting to point number 6. If you did not listen to the first 5 points, please do listen to the podcast from yesterday. And thanks to all of you who are giving us a 5-star review on iTunes and Stitcher and all your favorite podcast listening devices. And if you've not yet done so, please do consider giving us a 5-star review, and also do subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're putting all these podcasts up on YouTube as well. I know a lot of you like to have YouTube rolling in the background, just listening to the podcast, and that's really great. So before we get to point number 6, I want to share with you guys something I'm working on. Well, Julie and I have been working on together, but I spent probably 2 hours on it today, is understanding how to explain to all of you what the metaverse is and how it's going to relate to the real estate industry. And I have to tell you, it has been an absolute mind-bender experience, trying to not just understand it myself, but trying to make it so that it's understandable by other people. That's really the art and science of doing a really good podcast, is taking really kind of confusing topics, and you maybe sometimes having 2 competing thoughts in your head at the same time, and being able to fairly present both of them without being too biased one way or the other.
Definitely, especially something like this that's a bit off the menu. And
I've
been reading your notes, and it's like each point is like, huh? Really? That's interesting. Let me go back and read that again.
Well, you know what? So when I was writing the notes, I think it's point number 7. We're going to start on these metaverse stuff tomorrow. I think it was point number 7 that it was all of a sudden I had this. Remember, hey buddy, you want to buy the Brooklyn Bridge? Remember, guys?
I know.
Remember
I
that?
had that same thought too. Like, if you like this, I've got some land in Florida for you.
Exactly. Now some of you, this is I
they
don't
have
know.
no idea what we're talking about.
Well, I don't know that people even still understand that, but the gist of it is like, supposedly this story is in something like the 1920s or 1930s or something like that, or 40s, who knows. But there was somebody that was, and he eventually got caught, was essentially selling and reselling the Brooklyn Bridge, but not for real. He was just essentially a con man that was selling it to other people. And the story goes that the police would be on the bridge seeing the supposed new owners surveying where they were going to put up tolls so they can start monetizing their new investment, the Brooklyn Bridge. And evidently this guy was so successful at this that he sold the Brooklyn Bridge in what, if inflation adjusted, would amount to like tens of millions of dollars. So as I was going through these points...
Good salesperson, though.
Well, I guess. But as I was going through these points and I was writing all this down, especially exploring how virtual real estate transactions are happening, how there's virtual architects, and how there's like Ralph Lauren just basically got in the metaverse. Just writing all this down and studying all this, it really does feel like there's somebody on my shoulder going, "Psst, hey buddy, want to buy the Brooklyn Bridge?"
But I believe this.
Despite that, I think we're going to present to you guys a fairly fair and balanced approach to understanding the metaverse, because it is here. And Julie and I just returned from an EXP event, and I can tell you right now that if there's going to be a real estate brokerage that is going to be ahead of the curve in getting onto the metaverse, because it is real, despite the fact that at my age it's sort of hard to wrap my mind around it at 50. But the reality of it is going to happen. It is real. I look at our daughter Zoe. She's in 2nd grade, and I see her playing Roblox, and you guys who have little kids,
Roblox,
whatever, it's the stupidest game ever. Is what it is.
So dumb.
And the graphics are terrible. Everything about it's just awful. But it is so immersive and addictive that she just, we have to essentially hide her iPad so she doesn't play it all the time.
Absolutely.
And so when I see that, and I'm not a gamer, neither is Julie, but when I see her playing that, it makes me realize this whole metaverse thing, especially considering the technology that's coming. Again, I don't want to, give you guys too much information. That show starts tomorrow. But when we have, again, studying all this, I can completely understand, assuming the technology happens as fast as what people are saying it's going to happen. If you can essentially have a one-for-one experience where it's distinguishable but virtually not distinguishable once you put on your VR headset, once you put on your full-body haptic suit, you're going to be able to feel wind blowing on you. You're going to be able to feel human touch. You're going to be able to hear things. You're going to be able to have a literally immersive, an experience that is almost one for one to real life. And I'm going back to Zoe playing, I call it snot blocks, but roadblocks. Roadblocks, what is it?
Roblox.
Oh, so dumb. Anyway, I see her playing that and how addictive she is to that. I can just imagine what's going to happen to humanity as soon as these metaverses actually sort of sort themselves out and they're clear winners. But again, we're going to drill down all that starting tomorrow, and it's been a real interesting experience in science fiction meets reality.
I know. I read your notes and I'm like, I want to say, okay, the metaverse, it's real, except it's not real, except it's real. Like, how do you even explain that? So we're going to try and take you guys through that, and it certainly is an evolving thing, and I'm sure that we will have future podcasts as well as it develops.
But in the meantime...
Meanwhile, back to reality.
Back to reality. So how to generate 10 free listing leads now, part 2. Julie Harris, point number 6.
Yes, point number 6. Again, we've been talking a lot about utilizing 1-800-HOME hotline, how to use your sign, how to use home brochure boxes. And before we get to point number 6, Tim, I had a round of coaching calls today, as you know, and it did occur to me that due to so many years of such high velocity of sales, things you've listed and they sell quickly, that even our most experienced agents have gotten a bit out of touch with the fact that every listing you have should be treated like it's its own lead generator, its own business, its own just endless supply of self-generation of leads. So, because I had a lot of conversations like that today, and it's because, if you know that you're going to put a sign in the yard, some of them don't even do that anymore, but you put it in the MLS, it's probably going to sell by this weekend. They have this sense of like, I don't have time to launch it. It's going to sell itself anyway. And yet they're losing sight. I think they're becoming very clear as inventory is pretty low right now. They have lost sight of the point of being a listing agent is to learn to self-generate, to stop paying for leads, to be more profitable.
Well, let's take it to the next level. You and I were listening on our walk this morning. We walked 6 miles about the Rob Hahn Industry Relations. I think it's the name of the podcast. They, I enjoy it. It's always informative, and they do a great job. 2 guys going back and forth. But one of the things they were talking about essentially is what you and I have been talking about for 4 years on this podcast, which we saw essentially the buyer agent business model being something that really was in question. And Julie and I were looking at it strictly from not the perspective of buyer agents aren't needed, because we like buyer agents. Buyer agents make sense in the marketplace. Buyer agents are, needed in the marketplace. But the reality of it is how they were being paid in the marketplace was something that was abnormal for how real estate markets work in the rest of the world. Like, for example, in commercial, there is no buyer's agency. In the rest of the world, where aside from Canada, there's no entitlement for a buyer's agent to get paid commission. So after having traveled a lot, and of course, Julie and I look at real estate when we're traveling, it became abundantly clear that the buyer agency thing in the United States would be something that technology companies and really market forces would start to put into question, because if you're going to try to squeeze more margin out of a transaction and you're an iBuyer company, obviously you're going to look to see where you can cut it, and that's going to be on the buyer agency side of things. Well, that was our perspective. We were just looking at strictly from the business opportunistic side of the equation, and then from that information, we really always have been, but really more so once we saw the buyer agent commissions being under attack and all the rest of it, that business model being in flux. That's the reason we want you guys to triple down and become listing agents, because when you're a listing agent, if you haven't noticed, the technology companies are unable to disintermediate you from the transaction. So if you want to know what the future is going to be and what, essentially where the opportunities are in real estate, aside from maybe the metaverse, they're going to definitely be like they always have been in becoming a powerful listing agent. So, keep these things in mind, really, guys, is if you're progressing, you take one listing. You learn how to be a listing agent. You take one listing. We're going to show you how to generate 10 closed transactions from every single listing you take. Look, yes, it might be 3, it might be 5, it might be 20. But the moral of the story is you will be able to take that listing and you'll be able to leverage that into more opportunities, primarily focused on more sellers. More
for free,
leads.
by the way.
For free. And it all starts with the very basic, simplest of things, which is your for sale sign. So go back and listen to yesterday's podcast specifically on that.
Yes, so point number 6, points number 1 through 5 were indeed yesterday. Point number 6, do not hire virtual assistants to, quote, convert your sign calls, or any other kind of calls, by the way. Do not force your sign callers to go to a website, opt in, or do anything other than call you. Also, actually answer the phone or call back immediately, unless you're with clients. Furiously fast lead follow-up is what our coaching clients practice, and it does work. Your best leads are sitting out in front of your listing right now, wanting to see it ASAP, and probably buy it. They also probably have a house to sell, depending on the price range, of course. So be the one who helps them when they need help. So many leads are lost because agents sit on them. They send them to voicemail. Their voicemail is full. The prospect can't find them. They go to an assistant. It's terrible.
Well, you guys are natural, and I'm not criticizing you necessarily, but you guys really are not wanting to work buyer leads, because buyer leads right now in some markets are an active utility. I 100% get it. But you got to remember, half those buyer leads are going to have houses to sell. They're not going to buy until they sell. So you have to be calling back every single one of those buyer leads and pre-qualifying them. Now, some of you, to Julie's point, have never learned how to pre-qualify your own leads. You think you know how to do it, but you don't. You know how I know? Because you're not good at it based on how many listing leads you're pulling from your sign calls. And remember, if you don't have any listings, you can borrow somebody else's listing, because chances are there's agents within your same brokerage that aren't using signs. Go back and listen to yesterday's pod about that. And with their permission, you can put your sign in their yard. I'm not suggesting you do what Zillow does and pretend it's not, their listing. You obviously want to be honest about that. Use their listing, maybe even use their sign in their yard, but put at the top of the sign your 800 number for 1-800-HOME-HOTLINE.com, and that's going to generate lots of buyer leads for you. But really the bottom line, guys, is the best buyers are always driving the neighborhoods. They're not online. Remember that. That is not changing. In a market like this, that's becoming even more true. If you're sick of losing buyer sales to the buyers buying from the listing agents, well, then do what the listing agents are doing. Become a listing agent and be where the buyers are, which is sitting in front of the prospective houses that are for sale.
And answer your phone when they call.
Yeah, well, furiously fast lead follow-up.
Seriously.
You said, wait, they'll answer your phone. What's going to happen nowadays, if you use 800-HOME-HOTLINE.com, you're going to call them back. The calling them back when they're not expecting you to call them is secret sauce, especially if they're prospective sellers. You have now transcended way past, and we didn't talk about this much yesterday. We were always talking about how to generate more essentially seller leads from the people that are calling off your listings presenting as buyers, using our script to pull out the prospective seller leads. But you got to remember too, if those are sellers and you're the one that's calling people back furiously fast and you're pre-qualifying them, there's an excellent chance that when their house does go for sale, especially if you use our script, you're going to get the listing for no other reason than you were impressive to them when you actually called back urgently, furiously fast after they called looking for information on the house. You guys get this?
They love it when you call back.
If you want a USP and differentiate yourself, it's not your damn TikTok videos. It's the fact you're actually doing your job at a high level. It's not your brand. It's the fact you actually called people back. That's what's going to blow people away.
Yeah, and you know what? That's something that every single listener right now can get good at, okay? Make the commitment to calling people back.
But use a script, guys. Don't wing it. If you're winging it, if you're thinking, well, I'm just going to make my own script, you are going to be real estate roadkill. Remember, guys, there are more agents in the industry right now, more agents that are members of the National Association of Realtors than there ever has been, 1.6 million. And it's believed that there's at least another 1 million agents that aren't members of the National Association of Realtors. So there's, let's say, close to 3 million real estate people in the marketplace right now. And a vast majority of those people who got their freshly minted real estate licenses today will be failed out of the business, and not what has been the traditional amount of time, which is 24 months, but more like 14 months, 13 months. Most agents are failing faster despite the fact that there's more opportunity now than there ever has been because of all the things that are happening with demographics, all the things that are happening with new construction we teach you in the coaching company. Why? Because they're doing the wrong things to build their businesses. They're not doing the real work of real estate. They're not doing what they don't want to do, and they don't want to do it at the highest level. They are buying leads. They're trying to delegate everything. They're working on their brand and their logo. They're not actually there making furiously fast follow-up calls to folks and then pre-qualify to pull out the listings. Anybody who's been successful in real estate long-term, they are saying, hallelujah. If you've been in this business for more than 5 years, congratulations. You now have beat out 90% of the other agents, because if you don't fail within 24 months, most all other agents will fail within 60 months. So if you're listening to us and you've been in the business for 5 years, you know what we're saying is true. Otherwise, you wouldn't have been in the business for 5 years.
That's it. So point number 7, do use in contract or pending writers and then sold on your signs. This is some of the most valuable, least expensive, most effective advertising you can do. Get permission from the new owner to keep your sold sign up for a week or so after closing. Keep your home brochures in the box, but change the message to a compelling message. For example, Good news, I sold this home in XYZ neighborhood in less than 24 hours. Or you might even say for 110% of list, whatever the case was. Bad news, there's 5 more people wanting to live here. Call me today to see if I already have a match for your home. I'm going to give you a quick example, right freshly off of a coaching call, okay? One of our Canadian agents also suffering from low inventory, inflation, interest rates going up, the whole nine. Took a listing last week, okay, in a, let's just say, challenged neighborhood, okay? And didn't think that, he already thought it was going to be he thought it was going to be, normally it'd be about $450,000 listing. Kind of rough. Threw some paint on it. No big deal. Put it on the market for what he thought was high at $580. You know what it ended up in contract for? $730 with 11 offers.
I have a story to tell too.
No, wait. What is he going to do with that?
More to it.
He is then going to prospect the neighborhood with the good news, bad news. Good news is, did you know that properties are selling in this neighborhood for $730, which was previously known as a $450 neighborhood?
Wow.
Okay. What would you do if you knew we could probably achieve the same price for you?
You're talking about John Walkinshaw,
Yes.
and this guy sells hundreds of houses
That's
per
right.
year, and he's going direct to doors, and he's having direct conversations with the prospective sellers.
Proactive.
I'm going to share a story with you.
Yes.
In our neighborhood here in Puerto Rico, I won't say prices.
Okay.
Okay, there was a house that's sold, that's in contract, that's in contract for roughly 30% more, number 3, than what the previous sale has been.
Which was also a seriously high sale.
Right. And so I messaged this agent, and he was the one that was telling us that it's pending for this large number. And I then said to him, why don't you go door to door and let everyone know that you have done this, you had this success, and you set the new benchmark?
Because people don't know.
They don't know. And everyone was asking us because they know we're in real estate. Well, they don't know what the hell we do, basically. But they associate Tim and Julie real estate.
That's right.
And frankly, we do know what's going on because no matter whether we sell or not, we're still obsessed with real estate.
It's what we do.
Yeah, it's what we do. And so I then messaged him and I said, dude, go to, well, I didn't say dude. He was Hispanic. So I said, what's dude in Spanish?
I don't know.
Yeah. Anyway, so I told him, make a flyer.
Yeah.
Go door to door.
Yes.
Let them know about your success and your new pending. Knock on the door. And we know for a fact that there's at least 2 of our neighbors that are thinking about selling.
For
and
sure.
Probably at that price, it would be more than 2.
Probably nearly everyone.
Yeah, at that price, everyone's going to be raising their eyebrow. And he messaged me back very politely and respectfully and said, door knocking is not my style.
Ugh.
To which I said, well,
Okay.
then your competitors probably do have that style. We'll go to the doors and tell all the neighbors about this new comp, but they won't probably mention the fact that you're the one that put it in contract. He
All true.
supposedly double-ended this listing, right? So
true.
I promise you that's going to happen.
Yes.
One of his competitors is going to go door knocking
sure.
in our neighborhood, let all the neighbors know about this new pending, and they're then going to, that agent or agents are then going to pull out all the lowest hanging fruit of prospective sellers because it's not his style.
That's right, but there is a lesson in that too, okay? So let's say that you're not yet a powerful listing agent and you're climbing that ladder, you're getting your skills going. You can do what Tim just mentioned, right? You can find a recent, previously crazily priced sale in the neighborhood.
Let's not say that because we don't want to jinx it.
Well, right, exactly, right, especially our neighborhood.
Yeah.
But you can find another sale, right? You just have to disclose that you got the information from the MLS or wherever. And you can go and door knock the neighborhood. You can get the message out there. A lot of the other thing that's really cool people are doing is using that nextdoor.com neighborhood name/neighborhood name and directing all the calls themselves. Ask me about the recent sales in your neighborhood.
Well, but
that's
more
fine.
specific to this one in particular because it's going to be an eyebrow raiser when it actually shows up as sold. But that's just asinine to me.
I agree.
So this guy's mindset was, I took the listing, however long it took him to get the listing.
Yep.
I found a buyer, however long it took the buyer to work with him to buy the listing. And that he's not actually standing there underneath his apple tree and picking up all the little apples that are just barely, just right above his head. That would be the easiest. I mean, if you guys are standing here in our studio, I find myself
pantomiming the apples.
Pantomiming
the apple
picking up the low-hanging fruit. But that's
true.
That's incredible to me. And that's what a lot of you guys are. That's how a lot of agents think. And that's not how you're supposed to be successful long term.
Be more like John Walkinshaw in Canada, okay? Because he is being proactive. I'm just imagining, this is just a plain Jane normal 450-ish, previously 450 neighborhood. Can you imagine when they find out that they might be able to get over 7? Like to your story, who wouldn't at least consider it? So we talked about maybe they're like, well, I don't know, is that real? So he's going to offer to do some free comparative market analysis. That's all in your guys' wheelhouse.
They're conversation starters is the point.
That's
in most
the point.
of the country, well, like where John is, there's real winter going on.
Yes.
And most of the people will say, I'm going to list my house in the spring, whatever the hell spring is to them. That remember, when someone says that I'm going to put my house back in the market in the spring, always say, Mr. Seller, that's a fantastic idea. What does spring mean to you? When is that? And then say, is that February 15th? Is that March 1st? Don't let them define it. You define it, because what you'll discover is they're just going to agree with whatever you said.
That's right.
And now you have an end date when the listing can become available. Don't just allow the seller to control the conversation, because oftentimes they don't have it defined what the hell it means. Yeah. Anyway, so let's go on to the next.
Saying, oh, okay, that's not a script.
No.
Okay, so let's see. Number 8. Are we on number 8? We are. Consider using reflective real estate signs on your rural properties or land listings. You can do that in normal neighborhoods as well. They last longer. They're much better quality. They reflect like stop signs. This is another point of difference on listing appointments. They're pretty cool.
Well, they're made by companies that make stop signs.
Yeah.
And yes, absolutely. That's a no-brainer. Now, some of you are in communities where you cannot put up a for sale sign or a condo area or whatever. I get it. But for the vast majority of you, use the large. Now, again, we mentioned this yesterday, and it's very fascinating. And I don't necessarily like telling stories about Julie and I's career, but it's salient. So everyone, when Julie and I were in real estate, we essentially did all these points ourselves. Not essentially, we did. And one of the things we figured out that the for sale signs that everyone was using were from 2 different sign companies. And the reason the for sale signs from 2 different, they always were the same size is where I'm getting at. And they were relatively small. I don't remember the exact square footage, or however you measure it.
Like your standard issue thing.
It's tiny.
Yeah,
relatively speaking. So I went and did a little bit of homework, and I found out from zoning or whatever it was, how big a for sale sign could be. And an average for sale sign, or a for sale sign, the maximum size it could be was not quite 100%, but it was 75% larger.
Close to twice as big.
It was huge compared to what the rest of the brokers were using, the agents were using. So obviously that would be a competitive advantage. That makes our sign stand out more. I can certainly in some small way use that as a listing tool when competing for a listing with, a seller.
What makes you different?
And then you throw on the reflective sign, and then you put a brochure box on there, and then you put on the 800 home hotline rider on the top. And the average agent doesn't even talk about their sign, let alone use a sign. Don't you guys see how these little simple, not expensive things give you a true unfair advantage in the marketplace? They do.
Speaking of which, point number 9, do not have a confusing, overly busy-looking sign with 3 hang-down riders, 14 phone numbers, a QR code, a website, and your Facebook address. Keep it simple.
100%.
One number which goes straight to you. Ideally, 800 home hotline number.
Yeah, so all you want to have on your sign is whatever. Okay, let's give them some advanced coaching.
Sure.
I'm still thinking about reflective signs.
I know. I think if you guys want to Google, I think it's called Reflective Real Estate Sign Company or something like that.
So large reflective signs, just visualize driving up a street with sporadic city lights, and your headlights hit that, or someone's coming home from work, and it's in the winter, so it gets, especially if you're in the north, it gets winter, it gets dark at about 5:30. Headlights hit that, reflect back immediately that you've made yourself more special than all your competition. That's very, very powerful. Now, here's the other thing. Now, some states, you're going to have the broker's phone number, this is most states, has to be on the sign. We had that issue in Ohio. Now, our phone number when we sold real estate was 614-846-0500. And we had a lot of agents with, basically we turned this into the division of real estate. They're not using our RE/MAX North phone number. Well, yes, we were, because what we did is, knowing the law, we had on our personal phone bill, we had it say RE/MAX North / Tim and Julie Harris. And the phone company did not care, and so they put both of our names on the phone bill. And so when we got turned in, we were able to show them what the phone bill said, and we never had that issue again. So if you're in a state that does have a requirement for the broker's phone number to be on the sign, it might be broker of record phone number, broker whatever. That's just semantics. Get it changed. Now, the phone number that you put on the sign, it should be your cell phone number, and if you're in a state where it has to be the broker's phone number, I just told you how to change it. You're probably going to have to get it registered with the state so everything's completely kosher. But your phone number in real estate is like really nowadays your phone number is even more important than your email address, honestly, because everyone texts. but your phone number is going to be something that you want to take with you that is your phone number. Because if you decide to go from ABC Brokerage to, join Julie and I over at EXP, for example, you're going to want to have that phone number that you take with you, because most people are going to have your phone number stored in their phone, tagged to your name, and that is their own personal CRM right on their phone. You guys get it? Of course you do. By the way, if you guys want to join Julie and I at EXP, if you're ready to join EXP and you're looking for a sponsor that'll be proactive in your success, Julie and I are formally applying for the job of being your EXP sponsors. You can, guess what? Text me directly at 512-758-0206, 512-758-0206. If you call, I promise you I will not answer, but if you text, I will respond. 512-758-0206 if you're ready to join EXP. So on your phone, on your sign, just have your cell phone number ideally, and if it can't be your cell phone number for whatever, another phone number that you control. And
like
then
1-800-HOME hotline.
And then on the rider, have 1-800-HOME hotline.
Right.
Now, if you can choose, to Julie's point, and you can figure out how to have just one phone number on the sign, just have the 800-HOME hotline phone number on the sign. But again, you have to obviously abide by whatever your local state, whatever ordinances and laws and kangaroo court rules are, and that way you don't get in trouble. It's all semantics. It's all goes back to 1950s idea when brokers were essentially ruled every agent and all the rest of it. And now it's obviously tilted more towards agents being in control, but you still have to abide by those old rules. Next point, Julie.
Point number 10, open houses are also fantastic lead generators. Use your sign to advertise your upcoming open houses. Use inexpensive bandit signs, those are the corrugated kind of plastic type ones, to direct traffic to your open house, and door knock the homeowners whose yards you're planting signs in. Ask them who they know who you should invite to your open. Follow up on all open house leads using our system and our scripts to immediately convert leads to listings. Another coaching client example, Northern Virginia, Tammy Irby. Every time she does a neighborhood open, every time she gets a minimum of one active listing within 2 weeks or less, and usually has 3 or 4 listing leads from that. She calls them neighborhood opens because she advertises all the neighbors come, which of course are your listing leads. So you see how this is so counter to how agents are thinking right now. Why would I do an open when the house is going to sell itself? Why would I use a sign when the house is going to sell itself? Don't miss the point. We're talking about lead generation here.
Hold another agent's listing open if you don't have any listings that's in your brokerage. If you're in a brokerage where there's no listings, you need to move brokerages, frankly. You're not at a good brokerage if the brokerage has no listings. You need to move over to a brokerage that has lots of active agents with listings. And if you're the agent that has lots of listings, you should seriously consider having each of those listings open every single weekend. Julie and I did when we did have a team. We had a Harris tour of homes. And what we would do is we had all these corrugated signs that someone would put out for us, and it was pointing from one open to the next. And we'd hold each house open for an hour. And we did this when we were selling in New Albany, Ohio. So each, starting at like noon, the first one would be open from noon till 1 till 2. You guys get the gist of it. And there were people that would go to every single open house. And we'd have somebody there that was working the open house. And this is all part of our open house strategy, which is part of our coaching program. This is a little side note, but I just had this popped in my head because we took listings this way too, which was hilarious. Make sure if you're in a neighborhood and you're putting signs in people's yards, always ask permission to put the sign in the yard. If
you don't, and I mean, so many of them, they'll take it the wrong way.
Or they won't take it, but I promise you, they won't take your sign. They won't even say anything to you. But I promise you, when they put their house for sale, they are calling you. And I remember very specifically one in particular in a very, relatively speaking now, expensive area in New Albany, Ohio, where Julie and I were putting these directional signs out. And this was a new listing we just taken. It was like $1.3 million or something. And that was a lot for us. It's a lot nowadays too, and especially considering our first year in real estate, our average sale price was like $110. But anyway, so we were selling something that was over $1 million. We knocked on the neighbor's door, asked if we could put the sign in the yard. The neighbor was beside themselves. I remember it was a man. He was beside himself that we actually asked permission, went off on all the other agents. So-and-so never asked permission. They always put it in their front yard. And sure enough, within 2 or 3 years when he put the house for sale, he didn't even interview anybody else. He just listened with Julie and I just from that one interaction.
I'm telling you, it's the little things and it's the real life communication that matters to people the most.
The more people go online, The more people are in the metaverse, the more powerful offline exchanges in being able to communicate become. As fewer people, agents, have the ability to communicate and know what to say and how to say it, as they start to believe that they can fool the public into thinking they're successful just because they took a picture of them standing in front of someone else's, Lamborghini or whatever, right? That type of philosophy, approach to faking it until you make it, as a lot of people refer to it as. The market is worn out on that. What people will really want, especially in times of change, like what we're experiencing now with inflation, a whole bunch of other things that are going to start happening, technology, all these other things are going to start moving people along faster in directions that they aren't necessarily wanting to go. And that, like, for example, the metaverse. We'll just go back to and talk about that tomorrow more. But as that becomes a more commonplace thing, there are going to be people that naturally go to a state of fear of the unknown. They're just nervous about it. They don't want to be, they have a good bit of FOMO, but at the same time, they're scared. How does this new reality fit my old reality? Though, anytime there's a lot of things that happen, 2 or 3 things that happen that are like that are on the surface are benign, but because it makes people feel threatened, when people start to feel fear, they stop taking action. And you're going to have a lot of people, maybe yourself, that's going to start slipping into a state of fear. Interest rates rising, inflation, political unrest, who knows what's happening here and there. All those things, we talk about this frequently on this podcast. You need to remove yourself from those conversations, remove yourself from those thoughts, and focus on the fact that the greatest fortunes and the greatest, essentially, legacies have always been created during the greatest times of change. And we're entering into one of those now. Be part of the change. Don't get stuck in the mud. What a lot of you guys are looking to do is you're looking to create in your lives is a clear sense of direction and how you go from where you are to where you want to be. I cannot think of a clearer direction than, frankly, listening to this podcast. Maybe that sounds braggadocious, but obviously tens of thousands of you listen to us every day, so there might be something to that. But also joining our coaching program. We've made it very easy for you. Just text the word Premier to 47372, and you can sign up for coaching for around $100 a month. So text the word Premier to 47372, and you can be on your coaching call, semi-private coaching call tomorrow. What time does it start? Like 9 a.m.?
Noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific Coast.
Right.
Yes.
And so you can be on your coaching call with your own coach tomorrow, and the coaching starts at around $100 a month. And that includes a daily coaching call, Monday through Friday. Do not wait. Text the word Premier to 47372, and you can join for around $100 a month. And remember, message and data rates may apply. Anything else you'd like to say to these guys?
Yes. Well, it's funny. You mentioned when things change, people get into a state of fear. I would caution them. Sometimes you guys are there. You wouldn't maybe call it fear. It can manifest in things like waiting to see what happens. I'm going to wait and see. You personally might not call it, I'm feeling fearful. But when you say to yourself, well, I'm just going to see what kind of effect interest rates have or inflation has or these prices have, that means you're waiting, and that is inaction. And inaction is not profitable. So thus the treasure map and getting involved and allowing us to help you stay unstuck.
Remember the statistic that Julie shared with you guys yesterday, and I want to drill down on this, and this will be our final sub point. And again, listen to yesterday's pod, and we have thousands of other podcasts you can listen to as well. Julie's final point, or one of the points she made yesterday, was and when a survey was done, you'll remember the details better than I, 40% of all homeowners would like to buy or would obviously like to sell.
They want
to
move this year.
They want to move this year. 40% of all homeowners. Was it homeowners or just people in general want to transact?
I think it was people in general.
Want to transact.
So you'd have some first-time buyers mixed in there.
Now, here's what's different. Here's the reason that it was, I think, extraordinary, is because the traditional understanding is if you have, for example, a list of 100 people in your centers of influence and past client list, something like 10 of those people will want to transact in the next 12 months. The very fact that that number is 4x normal rates tells you
It's
how
huge.
much pent-up demand there is. Now, how many of those people again, there are a lot of variables here, but you have to assume that half of those people have houses to sell.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the reason the whole point of essentially the past couple days of podcasts is teaching you guys how you can proactively generate at least 10 free listing leads. And frankly, we gave you way more than that.
Well, actually, it's 10 free listing leads per listing.
Yeah, per listing. Exactly. And again, if you don't have listings, well, at this point, it's your fault. So learn how to be a listing agent.
Get some help.
That's what we teach you how to do. And Julie shared with you another statistic yesterday that, well, how many, I'm quizzing you on stuff you probably won't remember. How many new construction houses are supposed to be?
1.6 million.
This year?
Yes.
And last year there were a total of less than 6 million total transactions?
15.6% less.
Okay, so the moral of the story is there's tons of inventory out there. You just need to learn how to go after it and find it. There are thousands, millions of sellers out there that want to buy or sell this year. You need to focus on not waiting around for the business to show up in your email. Stop thinking that you can be passive with your lead generation. Otherwise, you're going to be like a majority of agents and become real estate roadkill. Learn to be proactive, especially in a changing market like this. When everyone else is telling you to go online and be social and hang out in the, doing TikTok videos and the rest of it, you and everyone's doing that. You need to do the exact opposite, because the exact opposite of where the opportunity is. The other ideas are oversaturated. We talked about this again on previous shows. Sorry for saying that a million times. But it's what we're seeing now is the end of push marketing. We're seeing the end of the era of you just being able to bombard people with messaging. That has actually been over for a good 2-3 years from now. And yet many of you are beating your heads against the wall, still trying to do that. Learn to step aside from that. Learn to be a proactive lead generator and make this the start of the rest of your life. You'd say your best year ever, but forget that. Have this be the start
best
of the
life ever.
Best life ever. Why think don't think too small. So guys, in the meantime, remember, if you have any show ideas, we get a lot of inspiration from the feedback we get from you guys. If you have anything you'd like to share with Julie or I, please do text me directly. Do not call 512-758-0206, 512-758-0206. In the meantime, you guys have a fantastic day.
This podcast is a part of the C-Suite Radio Network. For more top business podcasts, visit c-suiteradio.com.